welcome to Procurement Pivots, the podcast for procurement professionals wanting to navigate change successfully and create career success on your own terms. I'm Donna Bowden, procurement career coach and founder of Narrate Your Career.
And I'm Laura Sellers, executive coach for procurement and founder of Coaching for Procurement. And between us, we bring almost 25 years of supporting and working with procurement professionals. And it's fair to say we've navigated many of our own career pivots along the way. And now we're here to help you do the same.
Each episode will share practical strategies, honest conversations, and expert insights to help you confidently tackle the changes and challenges in your procurement career.
Let's get started. Hi everyone, welcome to this week's episode of the Procurement Pivots podcast. Thanks so much for joining us. And this week we are going to be focusing on planning for success in your procurement career on your own terms. So why have we chosen this one, Donna?
Well, we felt that this is a really important topic, I think, actually, and certainly, a lot of the conversations that I have with senior procurement professionals, often they reference the fact that they haven't always been that intentional about their future kind of, career direction or path or plan. And so, we know that, yes, some people are currently sat there right now kind of thinking about what's next, for next year, where do I want to be at the end of the year, etc. So it felt quite timely to share this one. But yeah, I just think it's one of those things that I find people are often slightly kind of regretful, actually, that they've not been more intentional with their, with their kind of career decisions historically. And so, so we thought it'd be a good topic to share with everyone today.
Yeah, I love what you say there about how when we have that feeling about regret, I think this time of year, because this episode is coming out towards the end of 2025, and sometimes, like you say, that feeling of regret can come up when you get to the end of another year and you think, oh, I remember feeling this time last year that I wanted 2025 to be different.
Yeah.
And then lo and behold, the workload has been really busy. Things have happened that might have been out of your control. And it's like the carpet getting pulled from under your feet, right? Or the rug being pulled from under your feet. So, yeah, that really resonates. And I think, when it comes to planning for success on your own terms, I think what I'd like to bring to this episode, I think when we were talking about it, is how you can bring some of that control back on your
Yeah.
terms. What can you do that can help you achieve what it is you're looking to achieve,
Yeah.
either if it's for a new year or for a new role or a new stage of leadership that you've achieved. So yeah, I think valid and very relevant subject, isn't it, for the people who we work with?
Yeah. And I think it comes back to that intentionality, doesn't it? It's kind
Mm,
of, just becoming clear on those things that are most important to you, and then thinking
mm,
about, okay, well, they're the things that are most important. How can I make them happen for myself? And, and take control of those things. And,
yeah.
yes, we don't know the external circumstance. We don't know always what's coming our way, but what we can influence is the decisions and the actions that we choose to take. So I think it's just kind of taking back some control and and really thinking about kind of where is it you'd love to be and how is it you'd love to feel in the future, and what are those things that can kind of help you to get there.
Yeah, and you mentioned as well, it's not just about the what, because sometimes when we think about planning, we think about planning tasks, the things that we're doing,
Mm.
but there's also that element around the being, right? What do I want to be? How do I want to feel? And emotions can be a tricky subject for many people,
Yeah.
especially in the world of business. I was having a conversation with a client very recently about how they're really people orientated, but they don't want that to take away from the fact they're also very commercial. They don't want it to be a trade-off.
Mm.
So I think, we can often think that if we're looking at the emotional side of things, the how we're feeling, that we can't do that if we're in a work mode,
Yeah.
in a results orientated role. So I
Yeah,
think it's definitely important because we all do have emotions, we all deal with them differently, but they
yeah,
all form part of how we do feel about our careers. So they're
yeah.
incredibly relevant.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think, for me, that the emotional side, like, yeah, it is so important. Like we've referred to it kind of previously on here, haven't we? Like so many decisions are made on what we think we should be doing,
Hmm.
not necessarily on, what do we most want to do? What's going to actually, what's going to light us up? What's going to give us the energy rather than drain us? And we've been talking in the background, haven't we, about our own businesses and our
Hmm.
plans for going into next year and kind of working out, like, what are those things that we most love doing and how can we do more of that? And, so I think like the emotion for me is so, so important. Like if you want to have a sustainable career where you're feeling fulfilled and you're enjoying it more than you're not, like that is the emotional side of it. And sometimes that just doesn't happen by itself. You
Mm.
can be lucky that it does happen by itself, but often you have to be quite considered about the choices you make and the
Mm.
situations that you put yourself in, to kind of, yeah, to feel that way that you actually want to feel most of the time.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned earlier about clients feeling regret. The word I often hear from people who I start to work with, certainly at the beginning, is that they feel like it's really selfish. It's
Mm,
selfish to focus on what their needs are, especially if they're in a role where they're taking care of others, they're in a leadership role, maybe it's family responsibilities at home, any
yeah.
personal responsibility that they feel. And if they're a helper, if they're a people person, that's the word that often comes up is it feels selfish to think about what
Mm,
I want. I've got a team to look after, I've got a family to look after. How dare I look at how I can make myself more fulfilled? It's a very common emotion that
mm,
I find in the conversations that I have. I don't know if you've heard
yeah.
that too.
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily the word selfish, but I think a lot of clients, like when they're starting to work with, someone like one of us for the first time, like a lot of people say, like it almost feels like a luxury or an extravagance to be able
Yeah.
to investing in yourself properly for the first time. Like it kind of, I think it's probably similar to kind of the selfishness, but different in a way. I think, some people think like, who am I? Like, why should I be spending this time focusing on myself, etc.
Mm,
So, and that can feel big when you're doing it for the first time, when you're really kind of, you're taking this time to spend time kind of just focused on you and your career.
mm,
So yeah, I hear that a lot. And I think, again, for a lot of the clients that I've worked with, like taking that first step to have that first conversation with me, like I think I underestimated, I'll say to people, yeah, cool, like, drop me a message, we'll have a conversation. But that step is massive for a lot of people because they think like, should I, can I? Is that the
yes.
right thing to do? So
Yeah.
yeah, so I think, and I just, again, we were talking about this earlier, weren't we? That often we put ourselves last. We put
Mm,
our family, often rightly so, prioritize family, prioritize the needs of the company that you're in, prioritize the needs of your stakeholders, your team. Like, actually, though, when are you going to prioritize yourself and what brings you that happiness and that
mm,
fulfillment? Because you're probably not going to stay working for that company forever. The kind of, the world we were in, the job for life, like that's not the world we're in right now. And your stakeholders are going to move on, your team members are going to move on, your boss may move on. Actually, you know, are you happy to always prioritize everyone else above your own
mm.
needs? And what does that then mean for the career that you end up having? And yeah, like how can you like almost prevent some of those regrets that you might have for yourself in the future by just knowing that you are focusing on the things that matter most to you?
Yeah, and I think you've articulated really well there about all those different things where we're talking about the emotions that sit behind it, the putting other people first. So when it comes to planning, the what part of
Yeah.
planning. Like, what are we looking for? What is it you want to do? Who is it you want to be? That vision, that picture can feel very clouded when we first start to focus on that. So how do we look to break through that barrier
Oh,
with
that's a
the
good
what?
question. And I think actually, that's the very reason often that, that people are coming to people like us often to kind of to work out the what. I mean, if I look at my own work, a lot of the clients, they don't yet have the clarity. They know
Mm,
they're they're not feeling maybe as happy as they can, as fulfilled as they can. And often they know the things that aren't quite right, but they don't yet know which direction is going to make them feel much, much happier.
mm,
And I think that, the great thing about procurement careers is there's so much opportunity, and your skill set is so transferable into so many different environments within procurement, within the business. But that gives you lots of opportunity often, and lots of opportunity, whilst it can be good, it can be overwhelming. So, yeah, I mean, that's obviously people can kind of work that out for themselves. They can, they can seek support. But I think for me, it's about just getting often kind of reflecting on things like, what do you most enjoy? What are your strengths? What's your skill set? Values is a massive piece. Obviously, we've done an episode on values. We both really enjoy the work that we do with clients around really understanding, recognizing your values, and what does that then mean for future decisions and future environments. Like, how can you create a career that is truly aligned to those values that are most important to you. I think I mean, I would say, a lot of the bigger breakthroughs with clients that come to me claiming they're stuck, they're overwhelmed, they're at a crossroads, and they just don't know. They don't know what direction to go in. And the value side of things, in combination with, understanding those other factors, like that can really shape, and make quite clear sometimes actually what that future path could look like for them.
Yeah, all great points. And that there are different tools that we might use to gain that clarity, right? Values we've talked about before that we, like you say, we both enjoy doing it because they often provide quite a big light bulb. But I think
Mm,
as well, going back to the planning piece, because there's so much unknowns, there's so many things we don't know. And so that can feel like, well, what's the point? What's the point of making these plans when a lot of this is out of my
yeah,
control? I want to get to the next level in my current company where I am now. But that's not is what somebody might say to me, but that's not necessarily within their control. But we plan for the action that they can take, that's in their control. And then
yeah,
all of a sudden, other doors open or other things become visible that might not have been visible before. So sometimes, and I think it might have been positioning maybe that we spoke about this, which is one of our very first episodes. It was a while ago now, so if it might not be the right one. But I remember talking about how starting with the end in mind, where
mm,
we've got a goal at the end in mind, but we might have to be flexible on how we get there, or other options might become available as we go. And I was reminding a past client of this the other day when they were texting me on some progress that they were making. And I reminded them that when we were talking about the same thing 3 months earlier, they couldn't see any options, but they took
yeah,
an action. And then all of a sudden, a new option became available. So, back to that planning, we
mm,
can plan for the action that we want to take, for the things that we want to achieve, the things we want to be, the who we want to be,
yeah,
what we want to see, the change we want to see. And those options might increase as time goes on because you are putting that intentional practice, that
yeah,
intentional action into place. So yeah, I think it's definitely something that we can plan. We can't control everything, but you'd be
no,
surprised that once you take that action to be more proactive,
yeah.
surprised at what comes up afterwards.
And I think feeling, in a chaotic, busy, loud world that we're in right now, like
Mm.
actually feeling in control of your own actions and your own path, like that is so empowering. And
Yes.
it doesn't always go, the way that you think, and sometimes it goes much better. Like,
Yeah.
this isn't always a like, oh, it's, it wasn't what I expected. Like, and as you say, other doors that you never imagined could open sometimes can open. But I think, essentially, unless we're clear on what we want to focus on, um, the progress often doesn't happen. And,
Mhm.
generally, what we focus on is what builds momentum in our
Yes.
lives, working lives. I don't think, this is not just, planning isn't just limited to work, is it? It's out of work as well. Like, what's that
Mhm.
life you want for yourself in the future, in the short term, in the medium term, etc. And what are the things you can do to help yourself to get there? But, it kind of, we can't focus on lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of things at once generally. Um, so it's kind of often better to, rather than try and commit to all these things that you're going to do, it's like actually try and work out like what is that thing that feels most important to you right now, and actually consistent focus, like you often say, that can turn actions into habits, and small actions can make big, big, big differences and build
Yeah.
massive momentum. This is not about like, spending hours and hours and hours every week on this. It's kind of thinking, what is it that's most important, and what small things can I do that is going to
Mm.
dull the needle, I guess, kind of most.
Yeah, and I think, we talk a lot about breaking things down, and I read this great quote from somewhere. It was in a business book I think I read, where we tend to overestimate what we can achieve in a year, but underestimate what we can achieve in 10 or something like that.
Mm,
And we could even shorten those timescales, because sometimes in the impatient world that we work in, we want to see results immediately. But like you say, breaking all of that down into small, consistent steps, so planning that end goal, but saying, right,
yeah.
this week I'm going to take this action, and the following week I'm going to commit to taking this action. Because, like you say, we sometimes focus on too many things, and oh my word, do I
Mm.
relate to that as a business owner? Oh my word, I relate to that.
Absolutely.
And spinning so many plates, wearing all these different hats. And I think procurement find themselves in such a
Mm,
similar position. There's all these
totally.
expectations on the role now. It's not just about process, there's about the business partnering and the strategic insight, sustainability, any other hat that procurement needs to put on. So when you've got so many plates to spin, so many different hats to wear, your focus is diluted, and therefore you
Mm,
don't feel like you're making progress. So I think, whether we're talking about career moves, whether we're talking about leadership moves
mm,
within your procurement career, I definitely agree with what you're saying around that focus. So, what really helps me is that I focus on like quarterly goals that I have, monthly goals, what I'm going to get through 1 week, what I'm going to get through in 1 day. And I think, that's what working actually with someone like you or I as well, where someone can hold you to accountable to those actions too, right? You said you were
yeah,
going to do this.
yeah.
Do we get up to?
Yeah, I think actually that's a really valid point. Like, um, you can develop this plan for yourself, but what's your system for holding yourself accountable?
Mm,
And what's your system for recognizing the progress and also recognizing the lack of progress or the challenges? So, and that is something that, sometimes we can do that ourselves, we can hold ourselves accountable, but sometimes, sharing that accountability, with others, can make a big difference as well. And that doesn't necessarily mean a coach. Actually,
mm,
sometimes you can kind of, informally have an accountability partner for yourself. I know with my
absolutely.
husband, I've said, on a few things, I'm like, look, this month or over the next few months, I really want to focus on this. And normally it's in relation to a personal aspect of, often it's like the work-life balance of,
Yeah.
juggling all those things, wearing all those hats. But, I've said to him, like, look, if you spot me doing this or not doing this, can you please help me to bring that to my
Mm,
attention? Or it might also look like, look, it's not a big conversation, but I just want to share with you like my progress on what I've done on that particular thing, just to have a, almost, it's kind of like I feel like I have to not justify at all, but kind of sharing it kind of holds you to account much more.
Yeah.
Um, but we're talking about all the hats and the busyness, and so I think like it's really easy to say, you know, add this whole extra thing into your life, to do. But if you're not currently doing this, you probably currently don't have the time to do it, and it's kind of then thinking like, how can you just create some
Oh.
allocated time, whatever
Mm,
that looks like, for you. Like you'll know what time you're able to create. But so many clients that I've spoken to, and non-clients, this isn't just client conversations, but often people say they've not sat down and planned their career, since the beginning of their career.
mm,
I've started with a new client this week, and that's one of the first things he said. He'd done some kind of exercises that I'd shared before coming into that first session. He's like, do you know what? Like, he'd been working like me for 20 something years. He's like, I have not sat down and thought about any of this stuff since
mm,
right at the beginning of my career, and kind of giving yourself the space to kind of think about those things that's most important can just make such a massive difference. But it's creating it. Like, normally we don't have that time, that hour, that 30 minutes. So really it is a decision. Like, what are you probably willing to not do in order to create this space for yourself where you've
mm,
got some time for you and for your career planning, so that you're not just always focused on delivering for everyone else, but you're actually thinking about,
mm.
what is it that you most want as well.
Yeah, because you don't know what you don't know, dear. So
No.
that taking that space, and we all have habits, we all have default behaviors and thought processes, these patterns that have served us well in our careers, but also sometimes held us back. And so that thing about not having the time, not having the intentionality, we've talked about self-reflection, which was another
Yeah,
episode that we've done
yeah,
about taking that time, because sometimes I've mentioned it a few times, like for coaching's about holding the mirror up. But even if you were doing it on your own, to take that time and dedication to go, do you know, I've not thought about this, or I just assumed it would happen because this is the way it's happened in the past. Or, I think and even that time as well, finding that time to plan, it could just be 15 minutes. You sat in the
mm,
car waiting for one of your kids to finish one of their sports clubs, which is what
yeah,
which is
yeah,
when I tend to do my doodling on my planning. But yeah, I think try and stack it onto something you're already doing where you've got a bit of space. That's where planning also really helps. That comes from James Clear's Atomic Habits, that like
yeah,
habit stacking. So, try and do something alongside something you're already doing where
yeah,
it can be done. So, for example, I used to listen to my podcast when I was commuting to the office. If I'm sat in the car waiting for my daughter to finish football, then I'll be sat there doing some little bits there. So that's something else that could really help with the planning is finding it in those little golden moments.
yeah. And I think then, we touched on this earlier, but for some people, like hearing even that word planning, it can feel quite structured and, oh, another thing on the to-do list, it's kind
Yeah.
of, it. But I think actually, and we've all done it, we've all had a plan that we've not then executed at some point, whether it's a New Year's resolution or kind of, best intentions, but then life gets in the way and work gets in the way. But I think just, coming back to maybe more of the emotional side, like actually think about like, what is the actual purpose? Oh, we're plugging these previous episodes. We've done an episode on purpose as well, but for everything, it's like, don't just have a plan because you think you need a plan. Like, think
Mm,
about like, why is this actually important to you? Like, what would executing that plan well, what difference would that make to your life, but to how
mm,
you feel about, say, your career? Like, there is an emotional side here to, like the plan feels structured, it feels processy, but actually it's kind of, that plan might be, look, this time next year I want to be here, or I want to feel like this. I want to be able to look back and say, do you know what? Well done me. I feel like I've had a good year. It was successful on my terms. So this isn't about putting other people's version of success on yourself. It's working out, what does
Mhm.
success look and feel like for you. So I think actually, like, that word planning is structured, but it's about, helping you to get to a place where you feel how you actually want to feel.
Mm. Yeah, and I mean the emotional side of things. I always like to tap into the emotional side of the work because I mean I'm an emotions coach, but it really does show up for a lot of people. We all process our emotions differently,
Mm,
and and I think we were talking about it at the start of the episode, just around when we are results driven people as well. Like, is there room for emotion? The emotion's there. It's around understanding it, understanding what that means, and like you say, if you're not a planner, if you're not a natural
yeah,
process-driven planner, which is the case for myself, I am I am a planner in a lot of ways. In other ways, I struggle with it. So I try to also tap into my natural energy as well. Like where does that planning work well for me? How
mm,
does planning show up for me? Like my best ideas, my best processes that I decide I'm going to go do this, this, and that. Oh, when I step away from the laptop, I need to
yeah.
remind myself of that.
Please step
But
away from the
yeah,
laptop.
yeah. But I think, even if you're not a planner, there
Yeah,
are ways to fit different bits in to that career planning process. You've got to lean into your natural style as well. So and certainly I would say that if you are working with someone who understands you, sorry, I say working, talking with someone, that accountability
yeah,
partner, so like you've mentioned your husband, and we obviously as coaches as well, it's our job to understand the person we're working with, or that's keeping us accountable, understand the strengths and the weaknesses,
yeah,
understand where it might work well in this
yeah.
sense and where it might not.
Yeah. And
So,
again, this clearly is an episode for plugging all of our previous episodes in case people have skipped straight to this one. But, I think this is where, like, that support from your network as well. Like, we've
mm,
spoken previously about, developing that kind of support system for yourself. And, I think so, we would encourage you to think about, what are those things that are important and putting the plan in, but also then think about, like, what or who could help you with the execution. We've mentioned accountability, which is one aspect of it, but actually, are there elements within that plan, whatever that plan is for, where you currently feel you've got a gap, or you don't have the knowledge yet or the skill, or actually, do you know what? Sometimes just talking to someone that's experienced that, it can be really helpful, and it can save a lot of time as well. Like, maybe, if you've got this aspiration to, whatever it may be, operate at this level, move into this industry, sometimes talking to people that are kind of there already can be quite insightful in terms of understanding their journey and what are their recommendations. And sometimes having that right conversation with the right person, it can collapse time for you in terms of, almost, reduce the time it takes you to learn and understand. And sometimes other people can help you to kind of get your knowledge there quicker.
yes. Yeah, and yeah, having someone like a mentor, I guess, in that
Yeah,
capacity, isn't it? Definitely collapse time. I love what you said there, because it could be that you've just not thought of that thing. We all have filters. We all have our own
yeah.
filters on things that we do or don't see. And I think, again, another episode we've mentioned, maybe, but where we talked about how if we've got those filters, that we just don't see opportunity. It was in opportunities, I reckon.
Okay,
Yeah,
probably.
we're gonna have to have a little guide somewhere, aren't we? But yeah, there's definitely something around if we have our own biases, we have our own filters, and if we don't understand something, or we haven't had our eyes open to something, we do miss opportunities. We do
Mm,
miss where people are willing to help. So definitely having that curious mindset really helps with this. Who could help me with this planning? Who could help me
mm.
with this gap that I think I have?
Yeah, definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. So, I feel like I'm always putting you on the spot at this point. What
Oh.
would your takeaways be? We need to start planning these takeaways, don't we?
I thought we did that. Yeah. No, no, it's not on the spot, but I would definitely say what we were saying, what I mentioned earlier about how we can overestimate what we can achieve in a short amount of
Yeah.
time and underestimate what we can achieve in a long a period of time. So let's just take a year versus a month. Just because you might not feel like you're making progress in that plan doesn't mean you won't get there. You've got to have the consistent momentum. So yeah, don't let's remind ourselves the beauty of patience. And with
Mm.
this plan might not always go in the timeline that you want, but the intentional action behind it will get you there.
Oh, some great points in there. Um,
What about you?
so I think just giving yourself permission to focus on what's going to make you happy. Like, yes, we all have, commitments to all these other people, family, friends, boss, team, stakeholders, etc. But you know, you're really important as well, and your future happiness will actually affect all of those people and
Yes.
can affect all of those people really positively as well. So it's giving yourself the space, the time, and yeah, I guess that permission to focus on yourself and what you most want, because going back to that point, typically, you know, what you focus on is where you build your momentum. And yeah, so again, to kind of talk about your point as well, it's like, you can control often a lot more than you think you
Mm,
can control. We can't control the external factors, but we can control our own progress and our own momentum. And so it's just kind of, yeah, giving yourself the space, the time, and the permission to sit down and work out what is that thing or those things that are most important, and then what is the step by step breakdown of what that could look like. And, as
yeah.
I've said many times, like, recognize the positive steps, the baby steps, the
Yes.
progress. If you don't have a practice in your career and in your life where you're celebrating the positives, um, you're missing a lot of like insight about what you're doing really well. And then sometimes we have a tendency to be really hard on ourselves and beat ourselves up about what we've not achieved. I didn't achieve that thing, but actually
Mm.
look at all those things that you did achieve. So I'm a massive believer in making sure you recognize your own progress and small
Mm.
steps along the way, because that's what gives you the resilience and the confidence to keep going with it. If you
Of
don't
course it does.
recognize it, if you don't recognize it, then it does feel difficult, and you're not spotting the progress that you're making. And progress it doesn't happen overnight. It's incremental. It happens over time.
Yeah, we're naturally wired, aren't we, to think about that one bad thing as opposed to the 10 good things that
Oh,
have happened. And that is an intentional practice, that we've talked about. And we've got to have those small wins. Like you say, resilience is built from the tough moments as well as the
yeah.
good ones, but you've got to remind yourself of the good ones as you go along. And it wouldn't be a procurement pivots episode without Laura bringing up a metaphor. But just turning back to what you said about the giving yourself permission and you're supporting all these other people. That oxygen mask anecdote about fit your own mask before helping others,
Mm,
because how happy you are in your career
yeah,
impacts those around you, whether that's in your career and your home life, whether that's in your leadership and the team that
yeah,
are around you. And so you need to give yourself that permission, because actually it's got ripple effects that span across other people.
yeah,
So give yourself that permission and go ahead. So yes,
yeah. Mm.
there we
We'd love
go.
to know your takeaways from these
Mm.
episodes. Like, we'd love you to share. Feel free to share on the pivots, the procurement pivots group that we've got on LinkedIn, or feel free to message us individually
Mm.
together. However, but we'd love to hear about kind of what it is you're taking away from these episodes, because you're taking the time to listen to these episodes, and we hope that it's encouraging you to take some small action that you can then kind of take benefit from, later down the line. So yeah, so we hope that you're continuing to enjoy the episodes and see the value of kind of, those small actions as a result.
Yeah, and even just one takeaway, right? If someone can take one thing and implement it, they could see massive results from that. So yeah, please let us know. We want to be able to bring more episodes based on what you're responding to best. So yeah,
Yeah,
please get in touch with
absolutely.
us.
Yeah, and of course, if you want any help or support with any of this, like feel free to reach out to, again, either of us or both of us, depending on, what the situation is. And, we're here to, we can have a confidential conversation with you and see whether it is a fit to work together.
Yeah, exactly. Brilliant. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. We will see you next week.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Take care. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for tuning in to Procurement Pivots. We hope today's episode gave you actionable tips to help you to continue to move forward in your procurement career.
If you enjoyed the conversation, follow our episodes, share them with others, and please support us on our social media channels for others that might be interested to tune in.